Alright, so with the torso finished, looking pretty good. We're going to move on to the torso, or rather the leg and the foot. Going to want to start with the crotch area. One of the things that I like to do when I start modeling for a while is change different views. So one of them, this one here, is it's got wireframe on the shaded solid, which is kind of nice to work with at times. So I'm just going to turn that on for the rest of the model. We go to faces now. We want to select out the center row where the crotch will be. It's going to be a shift selection there. Going to do extrude. Going straight to the move tool. Let's pull the crotch down. I'm just going to work with crotch and shape it so I get a nice rounding. Again, just working with different views here. I'm working with side, working with different faces, vertices. So you'll see me selecting sometimes in the perspective, then working in the front or side. As you get used to working here, you'll find yourself really switching a lot between the different views to really get the shapes you're after. So when you first start, you'll tend to focus a lot on your perspective view. You'll notice it's a good view, but it gets confusing at times. So now that we've got a nice rounding out, we're going to focus on the left-hand side of the character with the 6 faces I was just showing there. I want to position myself now in the perspective view. And I like to do this to get students used to figuring out how to move their camera around. You can actually look at this with a orthographic view, but I like to line myself up quickly, make a selection of the vertices in that center row, and then just kind of making sure I got that center row. I felt like it was moving a little funny, so I just wanted to look around real quick. And then what I'm doing is just really from this position making out an oval shape for the leg. That's oval. Kind of rounded. And we talk about this just taking the time on the first iteration of an extrusion is always worth it to just take a little time to round this out. It's not like it does all the modeling for you, but you'll see as we go along the rest of the leg how having it rounded at this particular part of the model really helps out. So you will see me take a little bit of time here. So that's looking pretty good. And you can see now I'm looking around just making sure everything's looking okay. Always want to check your model after you've done some changes. We're going to do the extrusion now, so we're going to select out the faces. That's 6 total faces. Okay. Always check to make sure you only have the faces you want selected before you do an extrusion. So always just look, do something, look, do something, look, do something, look, kind of like that. Again, keeping an eye on our front and our side views now as we do extrusions down the leg. Scaling and moving here in the front view. I want to make sure I look at my side view. Moving and scaling. Taking a look at my perspective view. Just making sure everything's moving the way I expect. So it's looking pretty good. So I think I'm going to do another extrude. I'm going to come down about just above the knee area. I'm going to scale it down a little bit to flatten and then kind of scale in, just again, just matching the silhouette. Move into the side view. Just like with the torso, we don't want to get overly complex with our modeling at this stage. We're just kind of following the silhouette as much as possible. Do another extrusion. Just on top of the knee here. The shapes of the rows will be altered later. This will be the kneecap. Mostly just trying to get the geometry out at this point. You're following the silhouette, but you will go back through most of these vertices at some point. Maybe not particularly this model at this point in the class, but definitely with your model. We'll do another extrusion, and this will go right down to the bottom of the ankle. So now I'm going to start just kind of working with the rows and just flattening out any rows that need to be flattened. So remember, the scale tool is just really great for flattening out rows. And this is a row that I want flattened. Again, it'll have to be bent again, but this row works best flattened. Let's take a look. Rest of the leg. We go into edges. Remember, with our edges, we can double click and we get a whole loop. So the knee's going to bend straight. If you think about it, so we really want our vertices at the center of the knee to be flat. And we'll just start that one flat for sure. Might be adding in some rows in here at some point, but let's take a look at this row. Maybe a little bit, but not entirely. So I want to keep some distortion to the rows on either side. And yes, I'm not flattening them entirely, but probably end up adding some rows in the knee area. But for now, it's fairly roundish like a leg, so feeling pretty good about that. So when we have the whole character out, we'll talk about just trying to finesse some of these edge loops a little better. Remember, this is a very coarse model. So now we're working on the foot. We're going to just do the selection on the bottom of the leg, same selection. So we're just coming off and we're going to do a double extrusion right here. The double extrusion really just sets us up for the making the rest of the foot. And we could split this if you knew about splitting, but we haven't really talked about it in the class, and we're just going to not talk about that right now. It's going to mostly work with the tools we know. So now we're going to do an extrusion that's going to go different directions. So you can see it just practice selection right there, but it's off the front of the leg now. So we're changing the directions of the extrusions. So we were coming down off the bottom. Now we're making a new selection. And it's going to be these faces. So it's a total of 8 faces. Now, if you're not sure, I think, I'm feeling pretty confident. I'm looking, as I look around, I know where I am. That is the front of the character, but if you need to zoom out, take a look at it. Doing an extrusion, you're going to see I'm just going to move it in the side view about halfway up the foot. I'm going to do another extrusion and then come to the toe. Maximize my view here. Just once I get the toe, I'm just going to spend some time now doing some modeling on the foot. It's not really a bare foot. It's kind of a shoe, I'm thinking, or a boot of some sort. uh, kind of a superhero boot. I don't even know what those are really, but anyway. Um, Basic form, foot form. So here we go. We'll do a little modeling. Sometimes it's a little easier to do some of these moves in perspective view. So you see me working perspective view, but just notice I'm really careful about grabbing handles. I'm not moving from the center of a selected tool. I'm always moving in 2 axes or 1 axis. So just notice I'm very careful about that in the perspective view. Working the side view. Oops. And so you can just see, just kind of working my way through the model and just kind of looking at parts that stand out. So now the center row kind of made that selection. I'm just showing I can do this also with an edge as well. Edge is a little faster, especially when you get those selections with edge loops, are nice. You can see there's a little discrepancy in the drawings. Try to look around those, but also notice how those discrepancies show and how when you make your own image planes, the more accurately you can align your front to your side, the better. So again, just switching between vertices, edges, just depending on what makes sense for me at the time with my brain. So sometimes there's you could do these selections with edges. You can do them with vertices. It's kind of what's working for you at the time and what you're thinking. What you have selected already. So just work your way around. There's no real right answer to which tool to use at times. It's if you're moving one vertex, sometimes that does really dictate that you have to have a vertex. But when you're doing multiples, sometimes edges are the way to go. So again, you see me working. I'm kind of looking at all my views as I do this. I'm working a lot in perspective as I do this, but I am kind of thinking of the other views as I go. Wanting to kind of align the big toe. Sometimes turning off the move tool makes it easier to select some vertices. Yeah, putting these down like this, wasn't sure, but it feels a little bit more like a barefoot this way, but shoes don't drop so much, but want a little bit of a big toe area. Let's work out on the heel just a little bit. You just, when you're doing these things, I'm kind of thinking of a shoe a little bit, even though, so how the tongue sort of comes up over there, and then, where it comes down along the ankle, the shoe kind of lowers, and then the back of the heel sort of comes up. It's kind of lining that up. I'm not getting too overly careful about that. I want to keep it simple for now. It's looking pretty good. I think I'm pretty close ready for the arm here. So we'll come back on the final sort of pick through, maybe when we're adding more rows and stuff, talk more about making that look good. So I'm just going to make a save here. And we're at mesh 1, so this will be mesh 2. And we'll put the save on, and the next one will be working on the shoulder, arms.